The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting an orange glow over the city streets as Jamal stepped off the bus. He had just finished his late shift at the local grocery store and was eager to get home. His sneakers hit the pavement with a familiar rhythm, and for a moment, the chaos of his day seemed to fade. The world around him buzzed with the usual hum of evening traffic and the distant chatter of people wrapping up their day. But then, something caught his eye. A sleek, silver car, too shiny and too expensive to be anywhere near his neighborhood, was parked awkwardly at the side of the road. The car's windows were slightly tinted, but even from a distance, Jamal could tell that it was a luxury vehicle, something far beyond the reach of anyone from his corner of town. Curiosity tugged at him. He didn't know why, but he felt an unexplainable pull toward the car. Maybe it was the fact that it was so out of place. Maybe it was the strange feeling in his gut that told him he needed to check it out. As he got closer, his heart skipped a beat. A man was crouched by the tire. He was dressed in a black jacket and jeans, clearly trying to change the tire, but the process wasn't going smoothly. His hands were covered in grease, his face twisted in concentration. Jamal's eyes widened when he realized just who it was. None other than Elon Musk, the tech mogul, the founder of Tesla, and the man behind SpaceX. Jamal had seen him on TV, heard his name mentioned in the news, and even admired his work from afar. But he never imagined he'd find himself face-to-face with the billionaire. For a moment, Jamal just stood there, frozen. What was he supposed to do? Should he just walk past and keep going? Or should he help him? His heart raced, and his mind spun with the possibilities. Could he really be of any help to someone like Elon Musk? What would he even say? "Hey, you need some help?" Jamal called out before he even thought about it. His voice was louder than he intended, and he instantly felt a wave of nervousness. Elon looked up, startled at first, but then smiled when he saw Jamal standing there. "You're the first person to offer help all day," Elon replied, wiping his brow with the back of his hand. "I could use a hand with this tire." Jamal blinked in disbelief. His mind was still processing the fact that he was talking to Elon Musk. But before he could say anything else, he was already squatting beside him, grabbing the jack to lift the car. "You're not from around here, are you?" Elon asked casually as they worked. "You seem like someone who's got more ambition than the average guy." Jamal's heart thumped at the words. Ambition? What did Elon Musk know about his ambition? He was just a kid from the neighborhood. He didn't belong in the same world as people like Elon Musk. But there was something in Elon's eyes, a kind of quiet understanding, a hint that maybe, just maybe, this was a moment that could change everything. "So, what's your name?" Elon asked as they finished up the tire change. "Jamal," he answered, wiping his hands on his jeans. He felt awkward, unsure of what to say next. "I live around here, just helping out." "Well, Jamal," Elon said with a nod, "you've got a good heart. I don't meet many people like you, especially in a place like this. You know, you never know where a simple act of kindness can lead." Jamal wasn't sure what to say. He was still trying to process everything. But before he could ask another question, Elon handed him a business card. "Give me a call sometime. I'm always looking for creative minds to think outside the box. Maybe we can collaborate on something." Jamal stood frozen, staring at the card in his hand. Collaborate on something? Was this real? He wanted to pinch himself. This couldn't be happening. "Seriously, Jamal," Elon continued, as if reading his mind, "you never know what's possible. I've built companies from scratch. If I can do it, so can you. Just never stop believing." Jamal nodded slowly, not knowing what else to say. "I'll think about it," he said quietly, still unsure if this was some kind of crazy dream. As Elon drove off, the car's engine purring smoothly into the night, Jamal stood there, his fingers still wrapped tightly around the card. The weight of it felt surreal, like something that was meant for someone else. What just happened? He thought, looking down at the business card again. The words on it seemed to blur as his mind raced. He'd just helped Elon Musk, the man who had revolutionized electric cars, the man who had plans to send people to Mars. And now, for some strange reason, Jamal was holding his business card. His pulse quickened as a thought bubbled to the surface of his mind. What if this was the opportunity he had been waiting for? Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? Jamal smiled to himself, feeling like he had just taken the first step on a journey that could change his life forever. Jamal stood on the sidewalk for a long time after Elon drove off, the business card still clutched tightly in his hand. The world around him seemed to swirl into a blur as his mind tried to catch up with the reality of what had just happened. He had always dreamed of something big, something more than the small world he lived in. But this was something he couldn't have imagined in 1,000 years. He shook his head, trying to clear the fog, and tucked the card into his pocket. The walk home felt longer than usual. The streets of his neighborhood were as familiar as the back of his hand, but today they seemed different. He couldn't quite put his finger on it. Maybe it was because he had just met one of the most influential people in the world, or maybe it was the weight of the opportunity that now sat on his shoulders. When Jamal got to his front door, he hesitated for a moment before walking inside. His mother, Margot, was sitting at the kitchen table, a pile of paperwork spread out in front of her. She worked long hours as a nurse at the local hospital, and though she always seemed to be in a rush, she still made sure Jamal had everything he needed. "Hey, Mom," Jamal said, dropping his backpack on the floor and walking over to the stove to grab a quick bite to eat. "Jamal, you're home late. How was your shift?" Margot asked without looking up from her work. "Fine, just long," he said, staring at the plate of food in front of him but not really seeing it. "Did you talk to your friends today? How's Tasha?" she asked, her voice soft with concern. Tasha was Jamal's best friend since they were little. The two of them had always stuck together through thick and thin. "Yeah, she's good. We're both just trying to figure things out, you know?" Jamal's voice was quieter now, as if the words themselves were too heavy to say aloud. Margot paused, finally looking up at her son. There was something in his eyes, a look she hadn't seen before. "What's going on, Jamal? You look like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders." Jamal hesitated. He didn't want to tell her about the encounter with Elon Musk. It felt too surreal to share, too unbelievable. She wouldn't get it. Instead, he simply shrugged. "I don't know. Just thinking about stuff. You know, the future." Margot sighed, her eyes softening as she stood up and walked over to him. She placed a hand on his shoulder, a gesture of comfort that only a mother could give. "Listen, I know things haven't been easy. I know I've had to work a lot, and it hasn't always been fair to you. But you've got something special, Jamal. You always have. Just don't forget that, okay?" He looked up at her, the weight of her words hitting him harder than he expected. He knew his mother worked tirelessly to give him a chance at a better life. The sacrifices she made, the late nights, the weekends spent working double shifts, Jamal knew that all of it was for him. She wanted him to have opportunities, to go further than she ever could. "I know, Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I just don't want to let you down." "You could never let me down, Jamal," she said firmly. "But I need you to believe in yourself. Whatever you decide to do with your life, make sure it's something that makes you happy. You deserve that." As Jamal nodded, his mind was still racing. But for the first time in a while, he felt a flicker of hope, of something more than the dead-end jobs, the struggle to make ends meet, the sense that he would always be stuck in the same place. Jamal went to bed that night with the same thoughts swirling around in his head. He thought about his neighborhood, how small it felt sometimes, how the odds were stacked against him. He thought about the dreams he had of becoming an engineer, of building things, of creating the future. But there were walls everywhere, walls that said people like him didn't get those chances. But then there was the business card. He pulled it out of his pocket and stared at it in the dim light of his room. It had seemed like a small thing when Elon handed it to him, just a casual gesture. But now, holding it in his hands, it felt like a doorway, an invitation to something bigger. Could he really do it? Could he actually work with someone like Elon Musk? His thoughts kept going back to the same question. What if? The next day, as Jamal walked through the familiar halls of his high school, he found himself still questioning the encounter. The laughter and chatter of students around him felt distant, like he was moving in a world that was separate from the one he was just beginning to imagine. His best friend, Tasha, caught up with him near the lockers. "Yo, you okay?" she asked, eyeing him with concern. You've been out of it all day. Jamal managed a small smile. I'm fine. Just thinking. Tasha raised an eyebrow. Thinking about what? Don't tell me you're stressing over that geometry test again. Nah, Jamal said, shaking his head. It's something else. She tilted her head. What's going on, Jamal? For a moment, Jamal hesitated. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. How could he explain to Tasha, of all people, that he had just met Elon Musk? That he was holding a business card from the guy who was changing the world? It felt too crazy, too unbelievable. But in the end, he decided to tell her. Tasha, I met Elon Musk yesterday, Jamal said, his voice low. Tasha blinked, as if trying to process what he said. Wait, what? The Elon Musk? Jamal nodded. Yeah, I helped him change a tire. Tasha stared at him for a beat, and then she burst into laughter. No way. You helped Elon Musk change a tire? I swear, I'm not making this up. He gave me his business card and told me I had potential. Tasha's expression shifted from disbelief to awe. That's insane, Jamal. Do you think he was serious? I don't know, Jamal admitted. But he said he's always looking for creative minds. And he told me to never stop believing. Tasha put a hand on his shoulder. Okay, this is big, Jamal. This could be your shot. You can't just ignore this. I know, he said quietly. But what if it's all just too big for me? I don't know if I belong in that world. Tasha shook her head. You belong wherever you want to be. You've always been the smartest person I know. Don't sell yourself short. Jamal looked at her, grateful for her belief in him. Maybe she was right. Maybe this wasn't just a fluke. Maybe this was the start of something bigger. The days that followed felt like a blur to Jamal. His life, once filled with routine, school, work, his mother's endless shifts, was suddenly filled with possibility. That business card from Elon Musk sat on his desk, always in his line of sight, a constant reminder of the opportunity he hadn't yet decided whether to pursue. He couldn't stop thinking about it. The words Elon had said echoed in his mind. You've got something special, Jamal. Never stop believing. It was hard to believe someone like Elon Musk saw something in him. After all, Jamal was just another kid from the wrong side of town. He had no connections, no fancy education, no wealth to fall back on. All he had were his dreams, and for a long time, those dreams felt too big for a place like this. The streets he walked every day were lined with broken dreams and fading hope. His friends and family were struggling just to make ends meet. And then there was Tasha. She had always been his rock, his voice of reason, his cheerleader. But even she wasn't entirely convinced he was ready for what Elon was offering. You can't be serious about this, Jamal, Tasha had said to him that morning. You're talking about a guy who has companies that are changing the world. What do you have to offer him? You're still in high school. I don't know, Tasha. I just feel like there's more for me out there. I want to do something big, Jamal had replied, trying to convince her, and himself, that he was ready. I get that. But it's not just about meeting some billionaire and getting a free ride. You can't just show up and expect him to hand you the keys to the kingdom. It doesn't work like that, she said, her voice thick with concern. You need to think about what you actually want, what you're willing to sacrifice. Jamal didn't know how to respond to that. Was Tasha right? Was he getting ahead of himself? The more he thought about it, the more his doubts started to creep in. He had always dreamed of being an engineer, of creating things that could change the world. But was he really cut out for the kind of pressure and responsibility that came with working alongside someone like Elon Musk? Jamal spent the next few days weighing his options. He replayed the conversation with Elon over and over in his head, analyzing every word, every look. There were moments when he felt the excitement surge within him, when he thought about what could be possible. But those moments always seemed to fade into the reality of his life. His mother's struggle to keep the lights on, his friends who were just trying to survive, his own fears that he wasn't good enough. One evening, after a long shift at the grocery store, Jamal returned home to find his mother sitting at the kitchen table, her face drawn with exhaustion. She looked up as he entered. Hey, Mom. You okay? He asked, dropping his bag by the door. Margot didn't answer immediately. She simply sighed, rubbing her temples. Jamal had never seen her this worn out. Just tired, she muttered, before adding, "You know, Jamal, I don't want to keep working these long shifts. I want to be there for you more. But bills keep piling up. The rent's overdue, and I don't know how we're going to make it this month." Jamal's stomach tightened. He could feel the weight of her words, the heaviness of her struggle. The pressure was building, and he was stuck in the middle, torn between his own dreams and the reality of their situation. "Mom, I think I might have a chance to do something big. Something that could change things for us," he said, the words slipping out before he could stop them. Margot's eyes softened, though the fatigue was still evident in her face. "What are you talking about, Jamal?" Jamal hesitated. "I met Elon Musk. He gave me his business card. He said he might want to work with me. He thinks I have potential." Margot blinked, as if she hadn't quite processed what he was saying. Elon Musk? The Elon Musk? The one who's changing the world with his companies. "Yeah," Jamal replied, running a hand through his hair. "He told me I should never stop believing." For a moment, there was silence between them. Margot was clearly trying to wrap her head around what her son was saying. Finally, she spoke. "Jamal, that's incredible. But you need to think carefully. This isn't just some dream. This could change everything for us, but it's going to come with its own challenges. You have to be ready for what comes next." "I know, Mom, but I've been thinking about it and I want to take that shot. I want to do something big, for both of us," Jamal said, his voice filled with a mix of hope and fear. Margot studied him for a moment, then nodded. "I'll support you, Jamal. You know that. But just remember, dreams come with hard work. And the road ahead might not be as easy as you think." Jamal's heart pounded in his chest as he processed her words. He knew his mother wanted the best for him, but he also knew the sacrifices she had made, the struggles she had endured. She wasn't ready to lose him to a dream that might be too far out of reach. That night, after dinner, Jamal found himself staring out the window of his room, thinking about everything that had happened. He thought about his mother, about Tasha's concerns, about his future, and about the opportunity Elon Musk had handed him. But the more Jamal thought, the more he realized that the conflict wasn't just about whether he was ready. It was about what he was willing to leave behind. He had no idea what kind of life awaited him if he chose this path, but there was one thing he knew for sure. He couldn't stay where he was. Not anymore. As Jamal lay down in bed that night, the weight of the decision pressed down on him, heavier than any tire he'd ever changed, heavier than any challenge he'd ever faced. He was standing at a crossroads, and no matter what he chose, things were never going to be the same. The next morning, Jamal woke up with a sense of resolve. The doubts, the fears, the uncertainty. He had pushed them all to the back of his mind for the moment. Today was the day he was going to make a decision, and he knew, deep down, that this decision would alter the course of his life forever. He had already texted Elon the night before, telling him he was interested in learning more about the opportunity. The response was quick and simple. "Great. Let's meet up." Jamal could barely contain his excitement. He was going to meet Elon Musk again. This time, not by chance, but because Elon had taken him seriously. As Jamal dressed that morning, he thought about everything he had to leave behind. His friends, his neighborhood, the familiar struggles of his life. But with every passing moment, his heart grew a little lighter. The excitement was slowly replacing the anxiety. By the time he reached the meeting spot, a quiet coffee shop downtown, Jamal was a bundle of nerves. He hadn't expected to feel so out of place, but as he walked through the door and saw Elon already sitting at a corner table, the reality of what was happening began to sink in. Elon looked up as Jamal approached, standing up to shake his hand. "Jamal, good to see you again. Thanks for coming." "Of course," Jamal said, trying to keep his voice steady. He was in the presence of a legend, and he was doing his best to act like it was just another conversation. "I appreciate you giving me this chance." They both sat down, and Jamal could feel the gravity of the moment. There was a quiet intensity about Elon, a sense that this wasn't just any meeting. He wasn't here to waste time. This could be Jamal's big break, or it could be his biggest regret. Elon leaned forward, his eyes focused. "So, Jamal, I know you don't have a ton of experience yet, but I've got to tell you, I think you've got something unique. I want to give you an opportunity to prove yourself. But here's the thing. It won't be easy. We don't make things easy for people who don't want to work hard. Jamal nodded. I'm willing to work for it. Elon smiled slightly. Good. Because success isn't just about talent. It's about drive, resilience, and being willing to push through when things get tough. It's also about having the vision to look beyond the next step and see the bigger picture. Jamal's mind was racing. He had no idea how he would measure up to these kinds of expectations, but there was something about Elon's confidence, his belief in what people could achieve, that made Jamal feel like maybe he had a shot. So, what's the next step? Jamal asked, his voice thick with curiosity. Elon's gaze sharpened. I want to see your ideas. What have you been working on? What do you think you could contribute to one of my projects? Jamal hesitated for a moment, the words catching in his throat. This wasn't some casual conversation anymore. This was the moment to prove that he belonged here, that he wasn't just another kid with dreams too big for his world. He took a deep breath and spoke. I've always been interested in engineering. I like to think about how things work, how machines and systems fit together. I've been trying to come up with ideas for affordable renewable energy solutions, something that can be used in low-income neighborhoods. I want to help people who don't have access to the same resources that the rest of the world takes for granted. Elon sat back in his chair, his expression unreadable for a moment. Jamal's heart raced as he waited for a response. That's an interesting idea, Elon said slowly, his tone thoughtful. We've worked on renewable energy at Tesla, of course, but I think there's a lot of untapped potential when it comes to making these solutions accessible to everyone, especially people in underserved communities. Jamal felt a spark of hope. I know it's a long shot, but I think if we can find a way to make energy cheaper and easier to produce, we could change a lot of lives. People shouldn't have to choose between paying their bills and keeping their lights on. Elon nodded slowly. I like that. You've got the right mindset. The road to making something like that work isn't easy, though. There's going to be a lot of trial and error, a lot of things that don't work. You have to be prepared for that. I'm ready, Jamal said without hesitation. Elon stood up, extending his hand to Jamal. All right then. I'll have my team reach out to you. They'll start you on a few projects and see where you can contribute. I think you're going to do great things. Just remember, this is just the beginning. Jamal stood, his hand shaking slightly as he shook Elon's. Thank you, Mr. Musk. I won't let you down. As Jamal walked out of the coffee shop, his mind was buzzing. He had just been handed a chance to work alongside one of the most brilliant minds of the modern era. His heart was racing, but it wasn't with fear anymore. It was with excitement, with the realization that this could be the beginning of everything he had ever wanted. But even as he walked to the bus stop, his excitement was tempered by a creeping sense of dread. He had no idea what the road ahead would look like. Was he really prepared for the level of pressure and responsibility that came with working for someone like Elon Musk? As Jamal stared at the business card in his hand again, he knew that the hardest part wasn't going to be getting his foot in the door. It was going to be proving to himself that he belonged there. The first week after Jamal's meeting with Elon Musk felt like a dream. His phone rang constantly with texts from friends and family, all congratulating him on the opportunity. But as the days passed, the excitement began to fade into a quiet, nagging fear. Jamal had always dreamed of doing something great, but now that he had been handed the chance, it felt heavier than he ever imagined. Each morning, as he sat down to work on the projects Elon had assigned to him, a new wave of anxiety would wash over him. His team at Tesla, some of the brightest minds in the world, had sent him complicated research and concepts to study. Jamal barely understood half of it. They expected him to contribute ideas, but he was still figuring out how to even speak their language. And then there was the pressure to live up to the expectations. Jamal couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't ready for this, that he was a fraud. What if they found out he wasn't cut out for the job? What if he let everyone down? Tasha noticed the change in him. The usual enthusiasm that radiated from Jamal whenever they hung out was gone. Instead, he seemed distant, his eyes clouded with uncertainty. You okay? Tasha asked one afternoon, as they sat on the porch steps of her house. You've been acting off. Jamal sighed deeply, running his hand through his hair. I don't know, Tasha. It's harder than I thought. They expect so much from me. I don't know if I'm even cut out for this. I'm just a kid from the neighborhood. I don't belong in their world. Tasha shook her head. Jamal, you've got to stop thinking like that. You're there for a reason. Elon saw something in you. You can't let doubt destroy your shot. But Jamal was lost in his thoughts, the weight of everything pulling him down. The following days only added to his unease. One evening, after another grueling day of struggling to contribute meaningful ideas to the team, Jamal received a call from his mother. Her voice was shaky as she told him the news. Jamal, I don't know how to say this. We're in trouble. The landlord's threatening to kick us out. The rent's overdue, and I can't make up the difference on my own. Jamal's heart sank. He felt a tightening in his chest as the reality of their situation hit him harder than ever. His mother had always been strong, always kept it together, but now even she was starting to crumble under the weight of their financial struggles. I'll figure something out, Mom. I'm doing everything I can, Jamal said, his voice tight with emotion, but in his heart, he wasn't so sure. How could he juggle this incredible opportunity with the responsibility he had at home? He couldn't let his mother down, but at the same time, he couldn't let this chance slip away either. As Jamal hung up the phone, tears welled up in his eyes. He had wanted this. He had worked so hard for this. But now that he was here, it felt like everything was falling apart. The pressure was unbearable. He didn't know how much longer he could keep up the facade that everything was fine. He returned home that evening and sat at his desk, staring at the research on his screen. The numbers and formulas blurred in front of him. Nothing seemed to make sense anymore. His phone buzzed with a message from Tasha. Jamal, let's talk. You can't keep this all inside. You're not alone in this. Jamal stared at the message for a long time before he typed a response. I'm not sure I can do this, Tasha. I don't want to fail. Tasha's reply was almost immediate. You're not going to fail, but you have to talk about it. Don't let it eat you up. That night, Jamal called Tasha, his voice breaking as he finally allowed himself to unload. I don't know if I can handle all this pressure. I'm scared that if I mess up, it'll all be over. I don't want to disappoint my mom. I don't want to disappoint Elon, or the people at Tesla, or anyone who believes in me. Tasha was quiet for a long time. Jamal, nobody expects you to have all the answers. Nobody expects you to do it alone. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. But what matters is that you don't give up. You've come this far because you've got the heart, the passion. Don't let fear take that away from you. Jamal took a deep breath, the weight on his chest lightening just a little. But what if I mess up? What if they find out I'm not good enough? Tasha's voice softened. You're good enough, Jamal. But you've got to believe that. Take it one step at a time. You don't have to do it all at once. Just breathe. Jamal didn't have all the answers, but Tasha's words gave him the strength to face another day. The following morning, he woke up and made a decision. He wasn't going to let fear rule his life. If he was going to make this work, he had to stop doubting himself. He had to push through the uncertainty and give it his all. No one was going to hand him success on a silver platter. But if he worked hard, kept his head up, and stayed true to his vision, maybe, just maybe, he could make it happen. Later that afternoon, Jamal received a call from Elon Musk. Jamal, I've been reviewing your work. There's something there. Keep pushing forward. We'll support you, Elon's voice said on the other end of the line. You've got a unique perspective. Don't forget that. For the first time in days, Jamal allowed himself to breathe a little easier. He wasn't there yet, but maybe, just maybe, he was on the right path. The road ahead was still uncertain, but he wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not when he had come this far. And just like that, the spark of hope flickered back to life inside him. The next few months were a whirlwind. Jamal dove headfirst into his work with Tesla, tackling one challenge after another. It was far from easy, and there were days when the weight of everything seemed unbearable. But with each small victory, with every problem solved, Jamal started to believe that maybe, just maybe, he was capable of more than he had ever imagined. He spent countless hours poring over research and working with the engineers. The tech world wasn't kind to newcomers, but Jamal found himself rising to the occasion. The initial fear that had plagued him began to dissipate as he started to understand the complex systems that powered Tesla's innovations. What had once seemed like an insurmountable mountain was now just a series of smaller, achievable steps. And then there were the moments of breakthrough. The times when he would be working late into the night, struggling with a concept, only to have a sudden realization that led to a solution. It wasn't just the work itself that made him feel alive. It was the sense that he was finally doing something meaningful, something that mattered. Jamal's mind often drifted back to that first moment when he helped Elon on the side of the road with the flat tire. That single act had opened the door to everything that followed, and now, as he sat in the conference room with some of the brightest engineers and designers in the world, he realized just how far he had come. The shy kid from the neighborhood who had no real direction was now part of a team that was shaping the future. It wasn't just about the work anymore. It was about the transformation within himself. One evening, Elon invited Jamal to his home for a casual dinner. The conversation quickly turned to business, as it often did. But this time it felt different. Elon looked at Jamal with a certain pride in his eyes that Jamal hadn't noticed before. "Jamal," Elon began, leaning forward, "I've been impressed with your growth. You've made a real impact here, and I think you've got something special. But I want to hear from you. What do you think you've learned over the last few months?" Jamal thought about it for a moment. He had learned so much, but one lesson stuck out above all the others. "I've learned that success isn't just about being smart or having the right skills," Jamal said, his voice steady. "It's about being persistent. It's about pushing through the tough moments, even when everything feels like it's falling apart. I've learned that the real challenge is believing in yourself when no one else does. And when you keep going, even then, you'll find your way." Elon nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Exactly. And that's why I think you're going to go far. You've got the right mindset. It's not just about what you do, it's about who you become in the process." As the evening went on, Jamal felt a sense of calm settle over him. He realized how much he had changed, not just in terms of his career, but in his outlook on life. He had come into this world feeling out of place, unsure of his worth. Now, he was beginning to see himself as part of something bigger. But it wasn't just his career that had changed. Jamal had also become more determined to give back to the community that had raised him. He remembered his conversations with his mom, the late-night talks about the struggles of their neighborhood, about the hope that seemed so hard to hold on to in a world that didn't always seem to care. His mom had been right. This opportunity wasn't just for him. It was for everyone who had ever felt like they didn't belong, everyone who had ever been overlooked. Jamal had a chance to change things, to make a real difference, not just for himself, but for the people who had supported him when no one else did. The next day, Jamal took a step that would change everything. He called his mom, telling her he had something important to discuss. When she arrived, he sat her down and explained his plan. "I want to use the resources we have now to help people in our community," Jamal said, his voice steady. "I'm working on a project that focuses on providing affordable energy solutions to underserved neighborhoods. But I also want to start a mentorship program. We need to show young people that they can do more than just survive, they can thrive." His mother looked at him, tears welling up in her eyes. "Jamal, this is incredible. I always knew you were going to do something big, but I didn't know it would be like this." Jamal smiled, the weight in his chest finally easing. "It's not just me, Mom. It's all of us." With that, Jamal started working on his new project, using the knowledge and resources he had gained through his work with Elon and Tesla. The project began small, with just a few volunteers and a handful of donations, but over time, it grew. As word spread about the affordable energy solutions they were providing to low-income areas, the impact was undeniable. People who had once been without power could now access clean, sustainable energy. And then, one day, Elon Musk called Jamal again. "Jamal, I've been following the work you've been doing. It's impressive. I think we could scale this up, take it nationwide. What do you think?" Jamal couldn't believe it. The man who had once been a stranger on the side of the road was now helping him bring his dream to life on a global scale. "I think that sounds like the future," Jamal said, a grin spreading across his face. "Let's do it." In that moment, Jamal knew that his journey had only just begun. He had faced doubt, fear, and failure. But through it all, he had persevered. He had learned that success was about more than just personal achievement. It was about lifting others up, about using what you had to make the world a better place. As he looked around at the people who had supported him, the community that had shaped him, Jamal realized that he wasn't just part of a company. He was part of a movement that was changing lives, just like his had been changed. Just when Jamal thought he had things figured out, life threw another curveball his way. His project, which had been gaining momentum, faced a massive setback, one he hadn't anticipated. It started as a minor issue, a delay in the shipment of crucial solar panels for his energy project, but within a week, it spiraled into something far more significant. A major supplier for the solar panels they were using had gone bankrupt. Jamal was left scrambling, his team in panic mode. They had hundreds of homes waiting for installations, and now they had nothing to give them. The partnership with Elon had helped spread the word, but now the momentum was starting to feel like a fragile thing, one gust of wind away from breaking. Jamal spent the next few days on calls, searching for a solution. He didn't know how he would explain this setback to the community that had placed so much trust in him. He knew how badly they needed these solar solutions. But without the panels, there was nothing he could do. One evening, as Jamal sat at his desk, frustration building, he got a text message that made his heart stop. It was from Tasha. "Call me when you get a chance." Jamal stared at the message for a moment before dialing her number. Tasha picked up on the first ring. "Hey, what's up?" Jamal asked, trying to mask the exhaustion in his voice. Tasha's voice was calm, but there was a hint of concern. "I've been hearing a lot of rumors. People are talking about your project. They're starting to lose faith, Jamal. They're wondering if it's really going to happen." Jamal's chest tightened. "I know. I don't know what to tell them. We're out of panels, and without them, the whole project is on hold. I don't know if I can fix this." "You don't have to fix it all alone," Tasha said softly. "But you've got to figure something out, Jamal. You can't let them down." Jamal closed his eyes, the weight of it all threatening to crush him. It felt like everything he had worked for was slipping away. That night, he lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The thought of quitting crossed his mind, but that wasn't who he was anymore. He couldn't walk away, not after everything that had happened. He had to find a way. It was then that he remembered something Elon had said to him during one of their conversations. The most successful projects are the ones that face challenges. It's how you respond to those challenges that sets you apart. That thought stayed with him. What if this setback wasn't the end of the road? What if it was just another challenge to overcome? Jamal spent the next few days doing what he did best, thinking outside the box. He called up local manufacturers, even those who had never worked with solar panels before, and began to explore new options. He reached out to friends, mentors, anyone who might have an idea or a connection that could help. Jamal wasn't going to sit back and let this defeat him. It wasn't easy. Every phone call felt like a dead end. Every email seemed to be met with silence. But then, on the fourth day of his search, Jamal received an unexpected call. It was from one of the engineers at Tesla, a woman named Sophia who had been working with him on the project. "Jamal," she said, "I've been talking to a supplier who might have the panels you need. It's a long shot, but they're willing to work with us if we can meet their terms. It's going to cost more, but it might just work." Jamal's heart raced as he listened to Sophia lay out the details. It wasn't ideal. The panels would be expensive, and the timeline for delivery was tight. But it was a solution. "I'm in," Jamal said without hesitation. "Let's make it happen." In the days that followed, Jamal worked tirelessly to secure the funding and finalize the deal. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when he doubted if it was all going to work out. But in the end, he managed to get the new supplier on board, and within a few weeks, the solar panels arrived. The installation process began almost immediately. Jamal and his team worked late into the nights, making sure everything was up and running. It wasn't smooth sailing. There were hiccups along the way, but Jamal refused to give up. Every obstacle he encountered only made him more determined. And then, after months of waiting and struggling, the day arrived when the first homes powered by the new solar panels were officially up and running. The community's excitement was palpable. People who had once been living without reliable electricity now had a sustainable, affordable source of power. The work wasn't over, but it was a victory, a hard-earned one. And for Jamal, it was a reminder that no matter how big the challenge, there was always a way forward if you were willing to keep pushing. That evening, Jamal took a moment to reflect on everything he had been through. The weight of the challenges he had faced over the past few months still hung heavy on his shoulders, but the satisfaction of seeing his vision come to life was worth every ounce of effort. He sat on the porch of his mother's house, watching the sunset, the sound of kids playing in the distance filling the air. Tasha joined him, sitting down next to him with a soft smile. "You did it, Jamal," she said, her voice filled with pride. "I did," he replied, his eyes focused on the horizon. "But it wasn't just me. It was everyone who believed in this. Everyone who had my back when I didn't think I could keep going." Tasha nodded. "That's the thing, though. You didn't give up. You kept going, and now look at what you've accomplished." Jamal smiled, feeling a warmth spread through him. "Yeah, I guess I've learned something through all this. Success isn't about getting everything right from the start. It's about learning, failing, and getting back up. It's about staying true to your vision, even when the road gets tough." And with that, Jamal knew that whatever came next, whatever challenges life had in store for him, he was ready. He had already faced the hardest part, believing in himself. The weeks that followed were a blur of success and recognition. Jamal's project, the one that had once seemed like a far-off dream, was now a proven model. The homes powered by his solar initiative were thriving, and the energy solutions were spreading through the community like wildfire. Word had gotten out, and it wasn't just locals who were noticing. The media was taking an interest, and soon, Jamal found himself being interviewed by news outlets and podcasts. Elon Musk, who had watched the journey from the sidelines, was impressed. "Jamal, you've done something incredible here. I didn't expect this to scale so quickly, but you've turned it into something even bigger than I thought possible," he told him during one of their frequent phone calls. But while Jamal was reveling in the success, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. The work was fulfilling, no doubt, but it felt like he was only scratching the surface. There were still so many people who needed help, so many communities waiting for change, and he knew he couldn't do it all alone. That's when an idea began to form. Jamal reached out to his team at Tesla, brainstorming ways to expand their efforts even further. What if they could create an ecosystem? One that empowered not just individual homes but entire communities. What if they could bring education and job opportunities alongside their energy solutions? It was a grand vision, one that would take time and resources, but Jamal was no stranger to pushing the limits. He knew that if he wanted to make a real, lasting difference, he had to think beyond just providing energy. He called a meeting with Tasha and a few key team members to lay out his plan. As they gathered in a conference room at Tesla, Jamal stood at the front, feeling the weight of the room's attention on him. "I've been thinking," he began, "what if we don't just stop at providing solar energy? What if we create something that helps people build careers in renewable energy? We've already seen how it's changing lives, but what if we can give them the tools to change their own futures? I want to set up training centers where people from underserved communities can learn the skills needed to work in the renewable energy field. I want to create jobs and opportunities for people who've been left behind." Tasha leaned forward, eyes wide with interest. "That's huge, Jamal. But how do we even start?" Jamal nodded. "It's not going to be easy, but I think the first step is to create partnerships with other organizations. We could work with local schools, community centers, and nonprofits to build the infrastructure. And then we work with companies like Tesla to offer internships, apprenticeships, and job placements for those who complete the program. We can create a real pipeline, an entire industry in these communities." The room was silent for a moment as everyone processed the enormity of Jamal's idea. Finally, Tasha broke the silence. "I'm in," she said, smiling. "Let's make it happen." With that, Jamal knew that this new chapter of his journey was only just beginning. He started reaching out to organizations and schools, looking for ways to bring his vision to life. It wasn't long before he had assembled a coalition of partners, companies willing to donate resources, community leaders eager to get involved, and educators who were passionate about creating change. The first training center opened in a neighborhood that had long struggled with unemployment and poverty. The response was overwhelming. People from all walks of life came to learn about renewable energy, eager for the opportunity to start fresh. Jamal watched as adults who had once felt hopeless now had hope again. They were given the chance to build a better future, not just for themselves but for their families as well. And it didn't stop there. Jamal's work began to attract attention from government officials and international organizations. The idea of community-driven change through renewable energy gained traction on a larger scale. Soon, Jamal was invited to speak at conferences, to share his story with audiences far beyond the borders of his hometown. At one such conference, he stood in front of a room full of leaders from around the world, including prominent figures in energy, politics, and business. It was surreal. Just a few years ago, he had been the kid with the flat tire, now standing here as a voice for change. In his speech, Jamal spoke not just about the success of his project, but about the power of perseverance, the importance of community, and the potential for innovation to solve some of the world's toughest problems. This, he said, gesturing to the audience, is what happens when we stop seeing problems as obstacles and start seeing them as opportunities. We can change the world, one community at a time, but it starts with believing in people, with giving them the tools and the chance to make a difference. We've done it in one neighborhood. Now let's do it in 100, then 1,000. The room erupted in applause, and for the first time in a long while, Jamal felt like everything had come full circle. What had started as a simple act of kindness, a flat tire on the side of the road, had now blossomed into a movement that was changing the way people thought about renewable energy, about community, and about the power of one person to make a difference. Back home, Jamal's mom was there to greet him when he returned from the conference. He had told her everything, of course, but this time, he could see it in her eyes. She was proud, not just of the work he had done, but of the man he had become. The shy, unsure kid who once struggled with self-doubt was now a leader, a beacon of hope for so many. "I can't believe how far you've come," she said, holding him in a tight embrace. "You've changed so many lives, Jamal. I'm so proud of you." Jamal smiled, his eyes full of gratitude. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mom. You always believed in me. Now, I'm just passing it forward." As Jamal continued to see his vision for a sustainable, energy-driven future unfold, he realized the impact was far greater than he could have ever imagined. What started as a small project to help a few homes now had the potential to shape entire industries. People from across the world were looking to him for inspiration, to see how his initiative could be replicated in their own communities. But with this new level of recognition came even greater responsibilities. Jamal had to navigate a complex web of partnerships, finances, and international collaboration, all while staying grounded in the mission that had started it all, empowering people. One afternoon, while reviewing documents for a new solar farm project in a developing nation, Jamal got a call from Elon. It had been a while since they had talked, and as soon as Jamal saw his name pop up on the screen, he felt a rush of excitement. "Jamal," Elon greeted him, "I've been following everything you've been doing, and I have to say, I'm impressed. You're onto something big here. You've really created a movement." Jamal smiled. "Thanks, Elon. It's been a wild ride. But honestly, I couldn't have done it without you. Your belief in me from the start, it's what kept me going when things were tough. Don't sell yourself short. You had the vision and the drive to make it happen. But I think there's an opportunity for us to take this to the next level." Jamal leaned forward in his chair, intrigued. "What do you mean?" Elon's voice dropped slightly, as if revealing a secret. "I've been talking with some people in the renewable energy sector, and there's a real push to bring sustainable energy to the most remote parts of the world, places that have never had access to electricity. If you're serious about scaling this, I think there's a way we can create a global initiative. Think big. This could change millions of lives." Jamal's mind began to race. A global initiative? The thought was overwhelming, but it was also thrilling. "I'm listening. What would it take?" "You'd need to expand your operations, build infrastructure on a much larger scale. We're talking massive investments, international partnerships, but I believe you could lead this." Jamal took a deep breath, the weight of the proposition settling in. This was the chance he had been waiting for, the opportunity to create a legacy that could truly change the world. But with it came the risk of failure, the uncertainty of managing something so enormous. "Let me think about it," he said. his voice steady despite the swirl of thoughts in his mind. After hanging up, Jamal sat in silence for a while. The possibilities felt both endless and daunting. Could he truly take this global? Was he ready for the pressure of leading such a monumental initiative? That evening, he called Tasha to talk it through. As always, her perspective grounded him. "Jamal, you've already done the impossible," Tasha said. "You've built something from nothing. You've shown that a single person can make a huge impact. This is the next step. You can do it. But remember, you don't have to do it alone. You've got a team, and you've got people who believe in you." Jamal felt the weight of her words. She was right. He didn't have to do it alone. This wasn't just his journey. It was everyone's. The community, the team, the people who believed in his mission. They all had a stake in this. "Thanks, Tasha," he said, his voice full of gratitude. "I needed to hear that." The next few months were a blur of meetings, negotiations, and careful planning. Jamal worked tirelessly to expand the infrastructure for his project, securing the resources he needed while carefully navigating the complexities of international agreements. Along the way, he forged new partnerships with governments, NGOs, and multinational corporations, all of whom shared his vision for a more sustainable future. And then, one cold morning in November, the first phase of the global initiative was officially launched. It wasn't just a success, it was a landmark moment in the world of renewable energy. People in remote corners of the world, from rural Africa to South America, now had access to affordable, clean energy for the first time. Jamal stood at the launch event, the crowd around him buzzing with excitement. He had never felt prouder of anything in his life. This was bigger than anything he had ever dreamed of. He had helped change the lives of thousands, and he was only getting started. As he took the stage to speak, Jamal's thoughts drifted back to that moment years ago when he had helped Elon with the flat tire. If someone had told him back then that he would be standing here today, leading a global initiative to bring energy to the world's underserved communities, he would have laughed. But life, he realized, had a funny way of working out. Every step, every challenge, every person he met along the way had brought him here. And now, he had the power to create real, lasting change. When Jamal spoke, his voice carried with the kind of quiet confidence that only comes from experience. "This is just the beginning," he said. "Today, we've shown what's possible when we work together. But we still have a long way to go. The world needs more than just energy. We need hope. We need opportunity. And together, we can make that happen." The crowd erupted into applause, and Jamal could feel the energy in the room shift. It was electric. The future was bright, and he knew this was just the first chapter of something far greater than he had ever imagined. As the event wrapped up, Jamal stepped outside into the cool night air. He looked up at the stars, and for the first time in a long while, he felt at peace. He had made it through the toughest battles of his life, and now, the journey was just beginning. He thought of his family, his friends, and the community that had supported him. He thought of the boy who had once fixed a flat tire on the side of the road. And with a smile, he whispered to himself, "This is what happens when you believe."